All right, we are live. Sunday Service, episode number 13. I welcome in the Instagram live viewers as well as the YouTube live viewers. I'm going to pull up the IG live on the screen here once we get her going so I can see the chats. YouTube live. We got you in here. We had a UFC card last night, UFC Louisville. It was interesting card. A lot of wild stuff happened. A lot of underdogs coming through. A lot of upsets. We're going to go through that card. Obviously, the controversial stoppage in the main event, co-main event, might have brought some fans to their knees. Dominic Reyes picking up a win. El Chino Problema, Meep getting it done in the featured bout. And then we'll recap the rest of the card as well. And then, of course, at the end, we got to discuss the controversy over UFC 303 happening in, what, about 2-3 weeks going on? Conor McGregor possibly having something up with his health. Not sure why the UFC would cancel the press conference. And then all the other controversy about it with them pulling off YouTube videos as well as pulling off the pay-per-view purchasing. Pretty weird stuff there. Going to talk about that. And it looks like it's in better places at this point because the UFC ran a promotion video during the fights on Saturday. So it looks like we're in a good place. What's up, James, in the YouTube chat? Shama. And I'm trying to pull up the IG chat, but it is not loading. Maybe I'll pull it up on my phone. It's just being super slow. But I know we got viewers in the IG chat as well. Don't want to forget about them. There we go. Herzog is your GOAT. Alfonso Lizardo. Herzog's your GOAT. You must have had a bet on Imavov. I did as well, but I was pretty pissed about it. Herzog for MVP. Puja Tomar. We'll talk about her as well. I don't know if the fix was in. I would assume so, considering the UFC is going to profit massively off of an Indian fighter getting a win. And I'm not sure that she won the fight, but I cashed a bet on that one. So I'm not mad about it. I'm happy about it. My bankroll is happy about that as well. Swap Cannonier on the Hard Rock 4-man parlay, and look what happened. So you put that 4-man in, and you swap Cannonier with Imavov. That's a bad beep there, Arnold. That's tough. Prates looked great as well. Yes, Gakumer, he looked amazing. Guy's a real stud. I got a good matchup for him in the making as well. We got some matchups that we can make. Let's get into it with the UFC recap. Last night's main event. If you're calling that a fine stoppage, I think you got some problems, brother. Or at least if you're saying Jason Herzog stopped the fight and he saved Jared Cannonier from getting hurt. Come on, man. This is the UFC. Fighters get hurt. Fighters get hurt badly. And for him to stop that fight after a flurry of punches, he's trying to run away for a reason because he's hurt. Okay, the idea that he's running away so then you can stop the fight just does not make sense. How many times have we seen fighters get hurt, run away, survive, and then come back to win the fight? Kyle, I swear to God, bro, I'm gonna next time I see you, Kyle, I swear to God, we're running a fade. You did not fade all my picks, and you won a lot of money. Kyle's trolling in the YouTube chat. Next time I see that guy, I'm putting him on blast. Back to the controversial stoppage. Herzog absolutely sold. I agree with you, James. Let's just think about this, right? So if you're running away, you guys remember the CJ Vergara, Daniel Lacerda fight. CJ Vergara was running laps around the cage. He was getting cracked. He was getting dropped. He actually hit the canvas multiple times. He was running away, defending himself by just running. Jared Cannonier wasn't running away, but he was moving away. He was trying to get out of there. He was hurt, but we've seen in the past fighters run away. They survive. They come back and win the fight, just like CJ Vergara did against Daniel Lacerda. He ran away for about 2 minutes, tired out Daniel Lacerda, came back to win the fight in the next round. Jared Cannonier's up 2-1 on 2 of the judges' scorecards. He's arguably winning the fight. And then gets hit with a couple punches, and then Jason Herzog steps in and stops the fight. Disgusting stuff, bro. Disgusting stuff. He's 40, and they want to say you can go again, champ. Bro, Jared's 40. He's 40. This is his last chance. His last chance. He's fought for a title before, and then he loses to Izzy, who at the time was making a case to be the middleweight GOAT. And then all of a sudden, he loses. He goes back. He beats Sean Strickland in a very close fight. Sean Strickland goes on to win the title. So the win over Strickland ages beautifully. Has the best performance of his career against Marvin Vettori. And then he takes a fight back in the rankings against Imavov just to stay active, just to stay in there. Maybe do the UFC a favor to give him a main event. And then bang, he gets hit with an early stoppage. Career's pretty much over at that point. It's tough. It's really tough. Tough move from Cannonier, and I don't know where he goes from here. Ultimately, a matchup for Cannonier I think would be decent is you give him a guy like Brendan Allen. I think Brendan Allen is like number 6 or 7 in the rankings right now. Cannonier was 4. I think he's 6. So, I mean, Cannonier coming off a loss, he's going to have to look back in the rankings again. There's no way he can move up in the rankings. Going to have to fight somebody back in the rankings. I think Brendan Allen's a good opponent because Brendan Allen's on a win streak. I think he's called out Cannonier before. They just didn't make the fight. And I'm sure at this point, Brendan Allen would love to take a fight against Cannonier, and Cannonier would love to take a fight against Brandon Allen. Stop the win streak, and maybe you get back to fighting ahead in the rankings. What's up, Kane? Keep up the good work. Appreciate you, brother. Could give him Hamzat. I doubt it. As far as Nasruddin Imavov, that's the other part of the robbery. The other part of the Jason Herzog robbery. He robbed Nasruddin Imavov from getting a highlight reel finish. Getting a real finish. Because no matter how you look at it, we're going to look at that fight. We're going to look back on it. We're going to say, well, it was an early finish. It was an early stoppage. So, did he win the fight or not? He was down 2-1 on the judges' scorecards. Did he win the fight or not? At the end of the day, it's a win on his record. But then you think, well, what does that really do for his career moving forward? Does that really help him out a lot? Maybe. Because at the end of the day, he does got that OV name. UFC loves those OV names. And he's from France. The UFC loves fighters from France. So maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe he just continues to rise up the rankings. They give him another good matchup. But it also could have hurt him because if he gets a highlight reel knockout there, gets a real finish, not an early stoppage, then that's a real statement. That's a real statement for Imavov. He continues to move up, and he gets a real solid opponent next. Top 3, probably, I would say. Right now, with the middleweight being the way it is, you have Strickland, who I think should get the next title shot. It looks like they're going to do Duplessis versus Adesanya in August. They still haven't booked it. I don't know why, because it seems like that's the fight that they've already made, but they just haven't announced it yet. So I think Strickland fights the winner of them. And then you have Whitaker versus Costa in 2 weeks, who I believe is probably a possible number 1 contender spot as well. We don't know. But the winner of that, I don't think Imavov should fight the winner of that. I think Imavov should fight the loser between Robert Whitaker and Khamzat Chimaev. If Khamzat Chimaev goes out there against Whitaker, has a good performance, but loses, there's no chance they're going to put him lower in the rankings. They're not going to remove him from his current spot in the rankings, and they're not going to make him fight backwards because they want Khamzat to win. He's undefeated. If he takes his first loss, he's still going to be fighting up in the rankings. Doesn't matter. So I think if Whitaker loses as well, then he's got to fight back in the rankings. You give him a guy like Imavov. They can build off the Whitaker name again. That's a real test for anybody. So I say you give him the loser between Whitaker and Hamzat. Imavov versus the loser there. I think that's a good matchup for him in the future. Did you see new Inside the UFC series? I've been seeing so many clips of that. I don't even know where to watch it. Somebody tell me where to watch it. Is it like, I think it's on like Roku TV or something, which I got Roku. So, I mean, should be pretty easy to find. Just haven't really had time to like sit down and watch it. So, if you know where to watch it, drop it in the chat, please, because I would love to know. You think Hamzat beats Bobby Knuckles? Yeah, it's in Abu Dhabi, so it is in Hamzat's favor. And the last time the UFC was in Abu Dhabi, well, it's in Saudi Arabia. It's not in Abu Dhabi. But the last time the UFC was in that region, he fought Kamaru Usman. He got the decision. A lot of people don't think he won the fight. Sean versus Imov, they got beef. You know, I could see the rematch between Sean Strickland versus Imavov, but I don't know that Strickland's going to be like, yeah, I'll go back. Maybe he will because he's a company guy, but that's just it's a lose-lose fight for Strickland. You know, like he's already beaten Imavov, and then he'd have to fight back in the rankings again. It just doesn't really make sense for him. And he said he wants the next title shot. So maybe he eventually puts his foot down and he's like, I'm not taking on these fights that don't mean anything for me anymore. I've done my work. I'm not going to take on Imavov. I've already beaten him. I don't know. Weird one. Favorite part of your Monday morning, man? Yeah, it's Sunday night here. So Monday morning, I believe, Paige, you're from Australia, I believe, right? Remember you from last week. Thanks for joining as well. Costa versus Imavov, bro. Costa does not deserve to fight up in the rankings anymore. Imavov was ranked number 7, ahead of Costa. Just beat Cannonier, who was number 4. So he'll probably be like 4 or 5 in the rankings. Costa is now number 8 or something like that. He does not deserve to fight anybody ahead of him at this point. They need to give him somebody lower in the rankings like a Roman Dolidze. That just should not be the that's not the move. It's not the move, man. You can't give Costa another jump up in competition. What up, Lloyd? How we doing, brother? How do you feel about Kayla Harrison's UFC 303 main event call out? Was that the Amanda Nunes one? Is that, if that's what you're referring to? Kayla Harrison fighting Amanda Nunes at UFC 303? I think that's what you're referring to. Not going to happen because I don't think they would make that on short notice, nor would that be the headliner for International Fight Week. I'm sorry. I like Kayla. I don't think she got that kind of pull yet. You know, she doesn't have that kind of pull yet. Izzy wants DDP or Hamza Chimaev before Sean, so that would leave Sean in a bad spot having to wait. Possibly. You know, I think Sean deserves it. And Izzy really isn't in a position to be picking and choosing. So I don't know, man. It could leave him in a bad spot, sure, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, IG chat. We're gonna cut you off here because eventually the IG chat's gonna get cut off. So if you're in the IG chat, go to the link in my bio, join the YouTube chat, and we'll continue the live. We got a lot more to talk about. We still got the entire card. We got matchups. And then we got to talk about the 303 main event as well. So jump in the YouTube chat if you're in the IG chat right now. Continue this conversation. Drop your chats, and we'll continue to roll on with the show. A in the chat. Hamzat versus Aliskerov 2. If Hamzat loses, that would be sick. That would be really sick. I would love to see that rematch eventually. Try to put it on the screen. Freaking work here. Come on. There we go. I would love to see that eventually. It'd be amazing. Because obviously Hamzat knocked him out the first time. Back on the regional scene. They got history. They're both really freaking good. And I think that's a great matchup for the future. Enough of the main event. Co-main event, Dominic Reyes is back. He's resurrected from the dead. Can't believe it. I honestly can't believe it. And it's one of those great feel-good moments in the UFC that we rarely get. Like, we rarely get this stuff. where a guy's so down in his career. He's been knocked out 3 straight times, 4 straight losses, been off for like 2 years. He comes back as an underdog, takes on a real guy in Dustin Jacoby, and he was still able to pull it off. First round knockout, man. Just real patented stuff there from Dominic Reyes. Like, that's his punch. Fade away left hook. And it landed beautifully, followed it up beautifully, and pounced on him, man. I mean, Jacoby got hit, but he wasn't down and out right away. Like, it wasn't a one-hitter quitter. Clipped him with the left, followed it up with a couple nice left hands, and then hit him with the knee, dropped him, got back up, and he was out on his feet. Finished him from there. Real good stuff from Dominic Reyes, man. Like, we don't get this stuff in MMA. Dominic Reyes getting a win in 2024. That just gives us hope for Tony Ferguson, man. If Dominic Reyes can come back from the dead, everything that man's been through, all those losses, he had the day-to-day diagnosis from the thrombosis, a blood clot that was life-threatening. To come back to the UFC after all that and get a first-round finish in your first fight back, that is some great stuff from Dominic Reyes. Happy to see that. We all, even if you had a bet on Dustin Jacoby, you had to feel good about that. You'd be like, all right, I might have lost money on Dustin Jacoby, but sure. Dominic Reyes picks up a win. I'm happy for him, and I'll eat my losses there, I didn't have a bet on Dustin Jacoby, but, I was always happy. I was always happy for him. Tony is. That's right, James. Tony is undefeated in 2024. He hasn't lost. So when he takes on Michael Chiesa, he could continue that undefeated streak in 2024. We will see. We will see. Gives him hope. Definitely gives him hope. But I'm kind of getting the same vibes. Low key. Kind of getting the same vibes. Dominic Reyes goes in there as an underdog. At one point, he was one of the best in the world, right? One of the best. Fought John Jones, nearly beat John Jones, arguably beat John Jones. Then he takes on Dustin Jacoby, who's always been, around the top 15 of the rankings. In and out. He's had good performances. He's had some lackluster performances. They give him that matchup. Dominic Reyes is an underdog, but he goes in there and wins because he's a better fighter. You get that same thing with Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. Tony Ferguson, at one point, one of the best in the world. Now he's on a crazy losing streak. Takes on Michael Chiesa, who's always been around the top 15. He's a little bit older. Had some lackluster performances as of late. Maybe we get the same thing. Maybe this is the year of the comebacks for the legends. Maybe it is. 2024. Could be magical. Chris Weidman got a win too. In 2024. Crazy stuff. It's very similar stuff, man. Weidman, champion, one of the best in the world in his time, on a losing streak. Fights a guy in Bruno Silva who's always been around, top 25 here and there. Big underdog, goes in there and wins. We'll see. We're just giving hope. Yeah, Jacoby has always kind of been overrated, but he's solid, man. He's a world-class kickboxer. He's getting older, and he just can't take the punches as well. You've seen it in a lot of his fights. Like, he gets clipped in a lot of his fights, like the Menefield fight, the Mirzakhanov fight. He gets clipped, but he was able to survive. Not against Dom Reyes, man. If you're that big and you hold that much power, you've been that good for your career. I had a feeling Dominic Reyes, if he was going to win, he was going to be able to put him away early and just get him out of there. That's why I played the under 2.5. Matchup for Dom Reyes moving forward. Give him Anthony Smith. That's the fight to make. Dominic Reyes, a legend. Anthony Smith, could say he's a legend. But, he's been around for a while. He had some losses. He picked up a win against an unranked guy in Petrino. So I don't really think he deserves to get a step up in competition. Just me, my opinion. I don't think you can rush him back in there against a top 10 guy because you might get it absolutely whooped. So give him Dominic Reyes. That's a fight that everyone would want to see. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith makes the most sense in the world. And for Dustin Jacoby, give him Vitor Petrino. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Maybe get Vitor back on track. We'll see. He can't get guillotined by Dustin Jacoby because Dustin Jacoby ain't got that in his bag. So might be a good way to get Petrino back on track there against Jacoby. Moving on, Raul Rosas Jr. Meet, baby. I told you so. How many people in this chat were one of those that commented on my IG reel that said, Ricky Turcios is tough, man. He's tough. He was the Ultimate Fighter winner. I don't care. Ricky Turcios really ain't good. He's not good. He does nothing good. He's just kind of there. He's there. He's in there surviving. He's not hurting you with anything. He's got terrible takedown defense. This is a perfect matchup for Raul Rosas Jr. That's why they made it twice. He was supposed to fight him at Mexico, and then he got sick. So they rebooked it for a reason. They wanted this fight for a reason because they have Raul Rosas Jr., who's 19, a real prospect with legit skills, and they need to get him some wins or at least some favorable matchups so where he can get wins and continue to build his momentum, continue to build his confidence because he already lost his O to C-Rod. So you got to get him back on track. Get him a few wins in a row. You give him Ricky Turcios, who can't hurt a fly. Raul goes in there, finishes him in round 2. Didn't hit the round 1 sub, like I said he could. But he got it in round 2, and it was a good finish for our boy Meep there. Meep ITD was at 2.5. Yeah, plus 150, brother. Gave that out on the IG reels. Absolute locksmith right there. Raul, here's a matchup for Raul. So they're not going to jump him up. They can't give him, a top 25 guy. I looked at the rankings today on Tapology where they give the full rankings like worldwide. They had Raul at like number 50 in the bantamweight division. Now, the bantamweight division is super stacked, and I don't think the UFC is going to rush him. Like, they're not going to keep giving him better and better competition. I think they're just going to give him around the same level of guys. So I think the UFC could probably give him a guy like Brad Katona. Brad Katona was also on this card. Brad Katona is a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. Brad Katona is a good fighter in a tough matchup because he's durable, got great cardio. He's very skilled on the feet as well, but he just doesn't have any finishing upside, like zero finishing power whatsoever. So I think the UFC could give Raul a guy like Brad Katona, which is a good test. I don't think Brad has a real high ceiling in the UFC, and at this point, they're probably looking at him like somebody that they can build off of. Like, give him a test. It's a good test for Raul. So, look it. Raul Rosas Jr., Brad Katona. And I would love to see Rosas Jr. choke him out because that would be amazing. As far as Ricky Turcios, get that guy out of here, brother. That guy should be cut. He's not good. His only wins in the UFC, I think, are by split, and arguable that he lost. Like he's just not a good fighter. Maybe they can keep him around because he's a little bit wild, but the whole thing with him screaming at Raul right before the fight, or right as the fight was starting, he screamed "F you" at him, and then proceeded to get taken down. Nearly had Raul Rosas Jr. Like he had his back, had the rear naked choke locked in. But Raul Rosas Jr. got that massive chin, that massive underbite. That was a real advantage in that situation because I don't think you can get anything under that chin. That dude's got an insane chin, massive head. And Raul, he didn't really look phased. It looked like he was like, oh shit, I haven't really been here before in the UFC. And then he just scrambled out of it, got back on top, and did his work. Aina Alip. When is UFC Tampa? Rumors have it as August 31st, Labor Day weekend. Billy Quarantillo said he was fighting late August. If that's the case, that would be sick because I'd probably go to that card. UFC Tampa. I have heard that they're going to have a Tampa card coming up. We just haven't really heard an exact date, and we haven't heard any type of fights that are booked for that date. So, yeah, I don't know. UFC Tampa will be sick. I'd probably go, just considering it's 3 hours away, and it's a fight night, so the tickets won't be absolutely astronomical. But yeah, I would love to see that. Labor Day weekend would be sick as well. Hopefully that happens. We'll keep an eye out. Down the card, Bruno Fajeda absolutely smoking Dustin Stoltzfus. But let me make this clear, boys. Bruno Fajeda, I don't think is that good. He's got some insane raw power, but he got really sloppy with Dustin Stoltzfus. Real sloppy. He was just throwing wild stuff. It looked like he was gassed after like 2 minutes in there. And he's pretty lucky he found that spinning back elbow, because if he doesn't get Stoltzfus out of there, I think in round 2 it's going downhill real quick. At the end of the day, I think Bruno Fajeda gets it done. He gets a performance bonus. It was a crazy spinning elbow knockout. But in the future, I see you. I see you, Gak Boomber. It might be a fade on Bruno Fajeda, because I don't think this guy is I don't think he has cardio, and I don't really rate. He was just kind of brawling in there. Like, his setups didn't look good. Now, he had great setups against like Gregory Rodriguez and even Phil Hawes, but if he can't get that round 1 knockout, I don't think he's going to be looking good after that. So yeah, the fade on Bruno Fajeda might be something to keep your eye on. He was throwing Hail Marys, bro. Once you start throwing spinning back elbows, that's when you know the fighter's like, oh shit, I'm not landing with my hands. I got to find some other way to hit a spinning back elbow, get this guy out of there. They landed. They did land. They did land, James. But yeah, I mean, he landed 2 of them. So obviously he came out and said that he was working on that stuff. So props to him for landing them, and highlight knockout. Real nasty stuff. So good for Bruno. And I think a good matchup for Bruno up next would be a guy like Edmund Shabazian. Shabazian's a real technical striker, solid on the feet. Not a guy that has a great gas tank, but I think that'll be a fun fight. Bruno Fajeda, round 1 or bust. Edmund Shabazian, kind of round 1 or bust too. That'd be a crazy matchup to start off, and a good test for both guys. Honestly, they're both kind of around the same range in the rankings for middleweights. And maybe, I think Bruno could go down to welterweight as well. I don't think has like a high ceiling at middleweight. I just think he's a little bit undersized. Obviously hits super hard, but a welterweight might be the move for him. Opinion on this wild August 3rd fight night card being built. I truly don't think I can watch Nick Diaz lose. Brother, you're going to have to watch it. But at the same time, I understand your concerns, because Nick Diaz did not look good against Robbie Lawler. And Robbie Lawler, that was like his only win in the last, 4 or 5 years at that point. I'm trying to get this on the screen for you guys to see. There we go. I think Nick Diaz, the thing with Nick Diaz, if he's going to come back and fight, he's only going to go back to fight somebody that gets him his like competitive juices flowing. So you either have to give him a legend like Robbie Lawler, or you have to give him a guy in the rankings like a Vicente Luque. So I'm sure he wanted to come back, and they probably offered him some guys, and he was like, nah, like it's not even worth it. Like it's not even worth my time to fight these guys outside the rankings. Then they offer him Luque, who's I think ranked number 14. And he's like, yeah, I could beat Luque. Now, if Luque is the Luque that we know, that fight goes one way and one way only, and it's Luque by absolute domination, bro. He would demolish Nick Diaz if that's the Luque that we know. The upside for Nick is that we don't know that the Luque from 2 years ago is ever going to be there again, because he didn't look good against Buckley, pretty much quit on himself. And then 2 fights before that, he had a brain bleed against Jeff Neal. So it's a fight that there's a lot of unknowns, and that makes it a little bit interesting. Now, the UFC absolutely fumbled, because they could have easily just done Tony Ferguson versus Nick Diaz. Wouldn't that make more sense, right? Tony Ferguson versus Nick Diaz, but I don't know why they decided to go that way. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. August 3rd is going to be a wild card, because a lot of stuff is just out of nowhere. And that was one of them that's like, oh my God, Nick Diaz is back and he's fighting Vicente Luque. What is going on with the world? Have you thought about throwing a conservative parlay bet just to get the payoff to double instead of higher multiples? I mean, yeah. Usually I'll put a parlay in that's like this should hit. This should be a conservative parlay bet. Usually on my homified picks premium bets. That's usually I'll throw in one parlay. Like these two sides make the most sense. I think they should both hit, and I'll throw it on there. But yeah, of course, always trying to make a conservative parlay bet. Of course, Klein needs to get a step up for real as well. He's been low key racking up okay wins. Yeah, I agree. Why don't we talk about him? Ludovic Klein, Thiago Moises. Absolutely domination from Ludovic Klein in a fight that was lined pretty close. And I thought Klein looked amazing. I don't know how the hell Thiago Moises didn't get that first initial takedown. He was so deep on that double leg, and Ludovic Klein was able to get out of it somehow. Somehow sprawl out of there. And I don't think Moises got him down one time. He was working him the entire fight. No chance that Thiago Moises was getting that guy down. Dude's hips are strong as an ox. And obviously, the guy's juiced up. He's a freaking tank in there at 155. He's 5'7", so he better be a tank. But he's a real solid striker on the feet. Really, really deadly and nasty kicks. And yeah, he looked good. I think a good matchup for him was one I believe they had booked. Ludovic Klein versus Joel Alvarez. Alvarez is inside the top 25 for lightweights right now, and Ludovic Klein just beat Thiago Moises, which is a real tough challenge for a lot of guys. So he beat him without any question marks, really. I think you give him a guy like Joel Alvarez, who's kind of been inactive, and that's a good fight for Alvarez as well. Book it. Staying on that topic, what do you think about Tony's chances in his fight? Tony versus Michael Chiesa. We already talked about this a little bit. We related it to the Dominic Reyes, Dustin Jacoby fight, as well as the Chris Weidman, Bruno Silva fight, where you're getting guys that were at one point were one of the best in the world, and they're fighting guys that were never the best in the world and have had lackluster performances as of late. So honestly, I think Tony has a decent chance to win this fight. Sounds crazy, but as soon as you start writing off these fighters like a Dominic Reyes, that's when they shock you. Now, Tony has been fighting really good fighters, like really, really solid fighters. Bobby Green, very good. Paddy Pimblett, for as much shit as he gets, he's good. Michael Chandler, good. Like, he's fighting good guys. Obviously, Justin Gaethje, like, I could keep going. It's a long losing streak. All right? I could keep going for a long time. But you get what I'm saying, bro. Like, he's, at one point, his skills are there. I'm a guy that has always, or at least recently, been like, Tony's finished. But I don't think Michael Chiesa possesses much on the feet to hurt him. And Michael Chiesa has not looked good as like recently. So I don't think Tony's absolutely out of that, you know? Conservative tickets in MMA is hard to hold when someone gets starched and you have yeah, I agree completely. Talking about the conservative parlay. It's hard to hold. It is hard to hold. Joel won't show up. He always pulls out of fights. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, it's tough to book him because he is always pulling out of fights and he rarely makes weight. Thoughts on the amount of fights that have been going to decision with the new gloves? Main card made up for the lack of finishes, but strange the amount of decisions lately. This is nuts. Absolutely nuts. I'll try to get that on screen so y'all can see it. There we go. Bro, so we had last week's UFC 302. Not a single knockout. Not a single knockout on 12 fights. And we were, 5 fights into this card? No, let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights into this card. So 18 total fights with the new gloves. And then we finally get a knockout. And it's not even with the fists. It was a Carlos Prates knee to the body. So that's 19 fights without a knockout with the fist. Add on 2 more. 21 fights with the new gloves without a knockout with the fists. And then we get Zachary Reese, 22nd uppercut knockout. 21 fights it took for the new gloves to produce a knockout with the fist. What is going on with the gloves, man? Like, this is some wild stuff. Did they nerf the gloves? Did they what happened? Or is it just the fighters? Are the fighters have that good of chins, or are they not throwing with the right intentions or whatever? But that's crazy. You're talking MMA gloves. Like, they shouldn't be that big. Maybe they're just lighter or something. I don't know. It's wild. It's wild. New gloves from Temu. How Islam's supposed to sign and frame those fuckers after the first championship fight with the gold gloves is crazy to me. Oh man, those gold gloves. I don't know if I like the gold gloves or not. They kind of look tacky. I would have liked if they were black with like a gold lettering or something like that. The gold gloves are a little bit much for me. Add increased eye pokes with the new gloves. Yeah, it was supposed to help with the eye pokes. The eye pokes just continue to happen. Like, that was another thing with the main event. Imavov was like out there with his hands out like this the entire time, and Herzog kept telling him to watch his fingers or close his fists or whatever. Nothing's ever going to help with the eye pokes. I've heard a lot of people shitting on the new gloves, a lot of fighters shitting on the new gloves. So obviously nothing really changed there as far as eye pokes go. And they aren't producing that many KOs because even on the card, Zach Reese had a KO with the hands. Dominic Reyes had a KO with the hands, and Imavov didn't really have a KO with the hands. So, yeah, the new gloves must be nerfed, man. They must be nerfed. They were falling apart. Gold gloves look goofy, to be honest. Yeah, I agree. They look a little goofy. Little bit goofy. A little bit tacky, I would say. Come on now. There we go. What do we think about Cannonier Vettori again? Both not title hopes, but would be a great fight night main event. Man, it was way too one-sided. I don't think they could make that fight again. I don't think anyone would get like super excited about it. It was a good fight, obviously, because so much damage was taken by Vettori, and Vettori had his moments early, but it was so one-sided. I don't think the UFC would even put that together again. We'll see. Would love a 1 out of 10 rating on next week's fight night. So actually, I just gave my early quick picks without a ton of research, pretty much just based on what I know of the fighters on my YouTube channel already. So go check that out if you want to watch that, or if you want to get my insight on that. It's okay. It's an Apex card, man. I think there is some fun matchups, like the Josh Van Ulan-Bekov fight. The main event is intriguing. Tetsuro Taira, Alex Perez. But overall, I'd probably give it like a 4. It really ain't good. If we're talking fight nights, that's a 4. It's below average. Apex stuff, it's not it. A lot of low-level fights. A lot of guys or women too, making their debut, and not great fights. Carlos Prates. Let's talk about Carlos Prates because we talked about Ludwig Klein. Carlos Prates had a hell of a performance. I thought he looked super sharp. The guy's going to be a problem. I think he's a hybrid between Alex Pereira and Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva has amazing kicks, really calm in there. Just looks like he's in control of the fight and doesn't really get hit that often. Really good hands. Prates has that feel about him. And at the same time, last night, we saw the same kind of style that Alex Pereira puts on guys. In their face, pressuring them, but not to the point where he's like throwing stuff with pressure. He's just in their face, forcing them to make decisions. Like, what are they going to do? And eventually, he broke down Charles Radke to a point where Charles Radke was on his back foot and he didn't know what the hell to do. And Prates was literally holding his hand or grabbing his wrist and looking at him. And then he just found a shot to where he could land the knee to the liver. And Charles Radke looked like he got shot with a shotgun, man. He went down quick. Like, rarely do you ever see somebody get hit in the liver and they go down like that. It was impressive stuff for Carlos Prates. He deserves a jump up in competition. And I think you can give him a guy like Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews just fought last week. Jake Matthews is a guy that's been around for a long time, solid striker, real good boxing, good ground game. I think that's a real test for Carlos Prates. You don't need to rush him into, a top 20 guy or a top 25 guy. This is his second fight in the UFC. The next one will be his third. Back-to-back knockouts. You give him a guy like Jake Matthews, that's a good matchup for him. And I think that would be a fun fight. He is nasty, bro. I would not want to take that knee to the body. Fuck no. Hell no. I think Khamzat is going to gas in the 5th round again with Rob. That's if it makes it to the 5th round, man. At that point, if it makes it to the 5th round, I'm sure he's going to be gassing. Let's get this one on the screen. There we go. How Soriano ain't get the finish, bruh. The lactic acid in his arms must have felt like they're fucking bricks trying to put him away. Dude, so Eric Nixick, I put that on my story, and Eric Nixick slid up. And, I told him, I was like, how did he not get a finish there? Like, I thought like the ref could have stopped it at any point because he was just putting it on him. And he agreed with me. He was like, yeah, I was calling for that, like, ref to stop the fight because he was just landed unanswered ground and pound for, like, the entire fight. So I don't know how he didn't get a finish. It was pretty wild. But, yeah, props to Puna going down a weight class, getting a win there against Baeza, who looked absolutely terrible. How do you come into a game or how do you come into a fight with a game plan of looking for submissions off your back, rolling for knee bars, looking for arm bars? Like, that's your game plan? That's how you come into a fight? You've been off for 2 years. You've been game planning for this fight for 2 years. And you come in and just lay on your back, look for arm bars and knee bars. Are we serious right now? This is the stuff we have to deal with every week as bettors. Like, how do you know if a guy's just going to go in there with the worst game plan and pretty much just give up on himself halfway through the fight? It's wild. It's wild. Let's see this. Long chat. Get that on the screen. Come on now. There we go. Overtime, a Russian fighter is on the card. Odds are always heavy in their favor, regardless of padded record or not. There are a few on the next card. Curious if the underdogs might be worth cashing in. Yeah, so there's a couple, right? Ikram Tricoli, which I think Ikram is he's going to win. I don't think there's any chance he loses. And then there's Ulanbekov, Josh Van. And I think Josh Van has a good chance to win that fight if he can keep it on the feet. He should be able to box up Tajir on the feet. But, it's a tough task. Stuffing takedowns from a guy whose name ends in OV and has no mustache with a beard. I think there's another one on the card. I just can't think of it. Hamza or Chimaev Whitaker take. So my take on this fight is I think Hamza is the rightful favorite, but that's all based on his aggression and his danger in round one. Because if he goes out there, so here's the thing. Let me get this on the screen. So Hamza, not that one. We'll go to that one next, Cody. I promise you. So I think Hamzat's like minus 220 or something like that. So what the books do, let me break this down. So what the books do, Hamzat's minus 220. They know Hamzat is most dangerous in round one. Okay, so once Hamzat goes out there and does what he does in round one, that line's just going to shoot up even more. And then Whitaker becomes a bigger favorite. After that, then they can adjust the live line. So, if Hamzat goes out there and has a great round one, then they adjust the live line, and they know that Hamzat might not be as good in round two. So they'll probably adjust it because he won the round, but Whitaker's not going to jump up to like some plus 500, plus 900 or something like that because they know it's a 5-round fight, and they know that Hamzat is not going to look as good in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's just how it goes. So I think Hamzat is the rightful favorite because he is probably the best first-round fighter in the UFC at this point. So he should be a favorite going up against anybody to start up. because round 1 he's going to win. And then round 2 comes in and the books are going to adjust those live odds. So, if you're taking Whitaker money line like straight up going into the fight, you already know you're at a disadvantage because he's going to lose round 1, most likely. So it's a tough one. But I think if Whitaker can survive, of course, I think he's going to have a big advantage in those later rounds. But it's so tough to survive against a guy like Chimaev. All right, let's go to Cody. Talking about the PFL. PFL's back this week with the regular season. And I will definitely be having some bets on those. And maybe I'll put out a video giving my picks or some bets on those as well. PFL offers some lopsided matchups, bets going down this Friday with the PFL. Yes, of course, James. I'll always have some bets on PFL because there are some high-level fights, especially in the regular season. PFL Europe, I'm not too keen on, but the regular season, they have names that I know and names that have a lot of tape on them as well that I can look at their records, look at the statistics that back it up, and you can make bets on there. So, of course, I'm going to have PFL bets. Karma looked like he didn't want to be there after he didn't get that knee. Yeah, I agree. Jekka, he's a weapon. Jekka, talking about Jekka? Yeah. We'll see. Muay Thai Cat from the Philippines. Yeah. I don't think Jekka is very good, but he's getting an easy matchup there. All right. I mean, there's not really much left to talk about on the card. We went through it all. Other than I should say Daniel Marcos had a hell of a performance against Castaneda. Good stuff for him. And a matchup for him in the future, I think it could be time to give this guy a ranked fight. Or at least a ranked fighter that isn't, up and coming. Because there's a lot of up and coming bantamweights. So I think there's a possibility they see Daniel Marcos being 16-0 and they give him Pedro Munoz. I think he's ranked number 15 at this point. They know Munoz has passed the hump. And get this off screen. They want to get the new blood in there. Marcos is still undefeated. He looked great, and I think it makes sense for him. Let's talk about Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor in the chat there, bringing it up. We got to touch on it, of course. It's if you looked at the thumbnail and you thought the McGregor Chandler main event was ruined, I apologize. I didn't even think about that before it was made and before I made the title. Not talking about that. As far as I know, McGregor versus Chandler is still on. The real thing that we need to talk about is what is going on. Like, what are the possibilities for the reasons that the press conference was canceled and then the UFC removed the ability to buy the pay-per-view and then removed the videos of Conor McGregor on the UFC YouTube channel? What could that all be about? Now, there's a couple things that it could be about. Number one, it could be contract negotiations or pay negotiations pertaining to Conor McGregor. So maybe Conor was looking for more money or something else, maybe more incentives going into this fight, and they had some discussions that weren't finalized, and Conor was like, well, I'm not going to fight unless this is done. And then the UFC was like, all right, fine. We're going to call off the press conference, contract negotiation type stuff. We're going to call off the press conference. We're going to remove this stuff. And then, they're just playing hard to get or something like that. I don't know. There's also the opportunity that Conor McGregor could be hurt or could have been hurt. And then they took it off not knowing what was going to happen. And then they find out that Conor will be good to go. Now, Conor, I don't think has ever pulled out of a fight. And I would assume if he went into a fight with a broken leg against Dustin Poirier, he'll go into a fight with some injuries going up against Michael Chandler. I would assume. There's also the possibility that he could have pissed hot with a drug test. And maybe he failed a drug test. And the doping commission was like, Conor McGregor didn't pass. And the UFC is like flipping out, trying to figure out what's going on. Or maybe the doping commission said, you can't have this press conference because Conor McGregor pissed hot. And this is not going to be a sanctioned fight because you have a fighter that's on the juice. And then the UFC did something behind the door and they were like, here we go. we need to make this happen. We'll do this for you if you can let Conor McGregor fight. Could be. And then there's also the possibility that I heard there were like some protests in Dublin regarding some political stuff or whatever happening on the same day as the press conference. And maybe that's why it got canceled, because they couldn't deal with all the protests at the time, and they didn't want to have the press conference there because of the protests or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how crazy those protests are, because I don't live in Ireland and I don't know what's going on there. But I would find it hard to believe that that's the reason the press conference was canceled, because of protesters. The UFC is a massive organization. This is a massive event. The press conference for the return of Conor McGregor, I would find it hard to believe that it was canceled because of some protesters. Just me. But on Saturday night, they put out the promotion during the fights. I think they put a promotion out on the YouTube channel as well. So everything looks like we're good to go. UFC 303 looks like it should be the return of Conor McGregor. But at the same time, we also have to think, like, how many times have we've been waiting for this announcement and just hasn't come to fruition? We finally get the announcement. We finally get a date. Then there's controversy. So once Conor McGregor steps in that octagon, then I will feel good about this fight actually happening. Because at this point, Conor doesn't need to fight. He's only fighting because he wants to. Chandler's been waiting years to get this fight. And he's so dead set on getting this fight, getting that payday. It would be a shame if Chandler didn't get the chance to fight Conor at this point, because he's waited so long. He's old. I think he's 39 or something like that, 39, 38. It would be a tough look for Chandler not to get this fight. So, yeah. You mean Chandler versus Volk? That would be – I would hate to see that, honestly. I would hate to see that. Not sure if you mentioned it or not, but what is your official prediction of the McGregor versus Chandler fight? Who takes the dub? So here's my thing with this fight, man. I think technically, if we're just talking technical skills, Conor McGregor has the technical skills to knock out Michael Chandler. I don't think Michael Chandler has the best chin. He is very aggressive. He's very open to being countered. And we know Conor is one of the best at countering with his left hand and finding openings. But Conor's been off for a long time. You don't know where he is exactly with his physical form, or at least how much he's been training, what level of training he's been getting, because he's a guy that he's not going to go to like a gym with a bunch of killers, because he has such high status. He can't just walk into a gym like an Extreme Couture and get rounds in with guys like a Farid Basharat or a freaking, like good guys. He's got to bring in guys that he knows that aren't UFC level. So I don't know what type of level training he's been getting in, but we know that he at one point was one of the best in the world. So technically speaking, I think Conor McGregor should win and should knock him out. But we know Michael Chandler is always training. He's always ready. This is a moment that he's been waiting for a long time. Maybe that gets to him. But at the same time, I don't know. I think when he gets in that cage, everything goes out the window and he just turns into a maniac. And I think that could come back to bite him. And I think he could get knocked out by Conor McGregor. So, yeah, that's pretty much my breakdown for that at the moment. I'd like to see how they look leading up to the fight as well before I make any bets. I think the line is pretty accurate. Like, they set it at a pick 'em. They're kind of like, we don't know. We'll let you guys decide, because we don't know what to make of Conor McGregor, and we don't know what to make of Michael Chandler after a long layoff as well. So I think it makes sense that it's kind of a pick 'em, and the books are kind of just saying we don't know. But yeah, that's my breakdown for Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor. Love your content, Hayden. Appreciate that, Rope Lord. Always in the chat. I see you, brother. You heard something about some family stuff as to why Conor canceled? Possibly. Could be. That could be a reason. Maybe he had something family-wise that popped up. And he had to cancel because he had to tend to that. Definitely could be. You know, he's got a bunch of kids. Maybe a kid got sick or something like that. He wanted to be there and couldn't go. We'll see. But yeah, I think we can end it there, boys. Another good episode of Sunday Service. Thank you all for joining. We'll be back here next week, recapping the UFC card and anything else in the MMA news. Stay up to date on everything on the Hayjivepicks YouTube channel. Dropping videos throughout the week. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Till next time, Hayjivepicks. We out.